all this silly stuff really starts to come, to the forefront of the news cycle, where when teams aren't actually and players aren't actually playing games. But if you actually need to go back and watch him play at LSU, and you just tell me whether it be in bad weather conditions or when he was moving around in the pocket, was he careless with the football? Was he not keeping two hands on the football? Did he have ball security issues? And the answer is no, 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 no. So now where things become a little bit more objective and we're looking at hard, concrete numbers when it comes to measurables, and people are all trying to sound like, they can discover something that no one else has. They're looking at this and going, hey, well, now, wait a minute. Is this size 9 hand? Is this going to be an issue for him, especially if he gets drafted by Cincinnati and he plays in the AFC North in cold weather? Is he going to have an issue? No, he's not going to have an issue. This is a premium player at a premium position who has the right mentality, the right approach. I don't think it's not going to affect him at all. And quite honestly, Pat Mahomes' response to him on Twitter, as far as saying, look, at 9 1/4, I'm doing just fine and I got your back, is probably the perfect way to kind of put a bow on this and say, hey, look, let's keep the main thing here, which is how these guys perform on the football field, how their medicals turn out here when they're put through the paces as far as that's concerned, which is a whole nother subject, and then how they perform in the formal interviews, which is where teams are really starting to now dig hard on these guys and figure out what they're all about and whether or not they're good fits for their organization. That's the most important thing here. Joe Burrow's head size, quite honestly, is irrelevant at this point to me.
Well, listen, I completely agree with you, but at the same time, I'm not going to summarily dismiss why people make it a big deal. Let's logically dissect this just for a second here. You're in Cincinnati. It's freezing most of the time during the football season. They prefer your hands be bigger. You're playing against grown men in the National Football League. You at LSU, you're the creme de la creme. There might be about 4 or 5 teams on your level. Outside of that, you stand in the pocket taking pictures, calling your girl, letting her know what time you're going to be finished with the game. We're going to go out tonight, all this stuff, while you looking to pass the ball to somebody because your team is just on a level that's high above most of the competition that you go up against. Even in the SEC, LSU was that legit this year. That's number one. Number two, one year I'll ask you this question, Louis Riddick,
sure.
And I'll ask you this, and I ask this to other people as well. I've seen plenty of instances where we've seen someone have a great season in college football, and still people said that does not make a career, and it certainly doesn't guarantee you success at the next level. We saw Joe Burrow be a little bit better than average his first go-round, and then last year, he played lights out, certainly impressed the hell out of me. I wish him nothing but the best. But the flip side to it is that's the lone season we saw him do what he did. Is it beyond the pale to sit up there and say, excuse me, he still has a lot to prove because we're not sure he's going to be great in the NFL, especially playing for an organization like the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yeah, let me say two things. Let me go back to the hand size here real quick. At the extremes is where you would start getting alarmed. I'm not necessarily dismissing his hand size, although I am dismissing his hand size issues. But at the extremes, it's a problem. Whether it be at the extremes when you're talking about 40-yard dash for wide receivers, that's where people take notice. That's where it's time to really go back and really reevaluate the film and look and see whether or not it's going to be a problem. Joe Burrow's tape isn't a problem. His hand isn't extremely small. It's not a problem. That's why I say it's not an issue for me. Now, as far as his sample size, look, there's plenty of quarterbacks who come into this league who started 3-4 years, who put up all kinds of numbers, and they still stunk when they got to the NFL. Okay? They still weren't able to play. They still weren't able to take their game up another level. So there's arguments to be made that say, look, no matter what you did in college, a lot of it's going to be determined by who you're surrounded by, what kind of teachers you have, what kind of support you have, what kind of support from ownership you have, what kind of infrastructure you go to. That's really what's going to determine success. Now, I understand there's inherent risk over the fact that Joe Burrow's only done this 1 year. And he's done it 1 year under the most ideal of circumstances where he had guys like Jefferson and Jamar Chase, who, by the way, Jamar Chase is a grown man. Just let me tell you this. He's not in this draft, but Jamar Chase is for real. He had the benefit of having those guys around him, and he had a passing game coordinator who now is an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and Joe Burrow. So, look, he has got Joe Brady. So he's got some things going for him that he's not necessarily going to have going for him when he gets to the NFL that he's going to have to prove all over again. But this is where managing risk is what it's all about when it comes to the draft. And part of managing risk when you're evaluating players is also evaluating what kind of place you're bringing him into. And I don't think for any football team is that more important than the Cincinnati Bengals. See, there's people who right now who are on the side of saying Cincinnati hasn't done a very good job of managing players and building an infrastructure that really is conducive to long-term success for anybody, let alone for a quarterback. And then there's people who say, well, look, Zach Taylor has nothing to do with how it used to be back in the day. Okay, so there's people who fall on both sides of it. Well, the fact of the matter is this. If you're going to draft a quarterback number 1 overall, like Joe Burrow, who does have a smaller sample size, it's just as important as it is to sit here and scrutinize Joe. It's just as important to scrutinize Cincinnati, both internally, meaning the people who are there, and us on the outside who are sitting here going, what do they have to offer him? And if they do draft him with his small sample size, how are they going to do everything in their power to ensure his success? I think that is very, very important. It's something that is overlooked a lot. Tua was coached by one of the Grand Masters, a guy who I respect implicitly in Nick Saban. So I know he has been well-versed in how to be a pro and how to practice like a pro. And then mentally, he has been challenged like a pro will be challenged at this level with the type of things that they required at Alabama as far as your preparation and your play and your play, meaning in order to stay on the football field, and then how you were asked to conduct yourself. Number 2, when you just watch him play the game, his movement in the pocket, his decision-making, his accuracy, his touch, his command, the respect that he had of the players. And he had some dynamite wide receivers, too. I mean, his receiver core is ridiculous. But his efficiency within the context of that offense and with those receivers, you couldn't ask him to do any better than what he did. Now, it's an issue as far as his availability going forward relative to the injuries that he's had. But you tell me, other than Tua's height, which isn't a problem anymore either, because we've already seen that whole myth be debunked. We know that 6-foot quarterbacks can exceed in this league. It really comes down to one thing. Will he be available for you? Because if he's available for you and you surround him with the right people, Tua's going to be an all-pro.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.